So hello everybody, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
All right, so we will begin in another 1 2 minutes. All right, so guys, before we begin, I want to give it an opportunity to you to check if you have any questions, if you have any doubts from what we did discussed and what we learned in our previous lecture.
Good morning, sir. Ravi this side.
Yeah, good morning.
Hello. Yeah. Sir, it's not with respect to the session, last session, but with respect to the assignment, part A and part B. So, in part B, do we need to develop any kind of application?
Yes, yes.
And
Hmm.
like person like me who is not from the development background, in that case, what we can do, sir?
That's why it is a group activity, right? So uh, you can participate in a group with your friends, and then you can figure it out that okay, how do you want to take it up. Basically, it's a group exercise. You can pick up anything, right? It's not only about the coding, but you can pick up
Can
any
can I pick
technical area.
any open source application available, GitHub, and then is if I'm understanding correctly, the idea is to know how the deployments and all. We need to just club all these different resources and make it an application runnable, right? And see how this function in a real time.
Yes, yes, exactly. So
Mhm.
ultimately, you would have to deploy the application. So
Mhm.
you can basically take some component of the cloud, and then you can deploy that. But please work in a, because working in a group is very important.
Mhm. Yes, yes, we are all working, but and then we had a doubt that whether we need to code application and then develop it, or we can use any open source application as well available in somewhere open source or GitHub. Definitely, it should have some meaningful. I mean, it shouldn't be like generic one. That's something we will take care. But I just wanted to confirm on that.
Yeah, it is good. It is essential. It would be nice if you can have it in that form.
Right.
Because it makes sense to do the end-to-end stuff. That is expectation. But if it is
Understood.
getting too difficult, then at least you should be able to through the cloud experience.
Right, right. Okay, fine, sir. Thank you so much. And for part A, we can pick it up any case study, right? It's just a case study, either available on internet or either within the organization we can pick it up.
Exactly, yes. So it can be any case study.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, sir. I got it.
Mm.
Okay.
All right. So, guys, if there are no doubts in the previous lecture, then let's proceed ahead to learn about what we are going to see in our today's lecture. So, here we are going to discuss about um, how the virtual machines gets provisioned. I think we have already seen that in quite a lot of details earlier. But yeah, that's where we are going to deep dive further. Then we are going to, at a later stage rather, we shall also be looking into a very interesting aspect of the virtual machine, which shall be the VMware migration. We shall try to understand what is the importance of the virtual machine migration, what are the different techniques which are there for the virtual machine migration, and what are the various advantages and disadvantages along with the various possibilities which are available. Towards the end, we shall also showcase a quick demo on basically how does a VM migration takes place. So that's fair. So today's discussion would be, primarily around the virtual machine provisioning and migration. So this provisioning is nothing, as you all know, but we are creating a virtual machine that is a provisioning. You give a request, you specify the various details of the stuff that you wanted to create it, and the virtual machine gets provisioned. That's how we technically call it as. Now, after this, we are going to talk about the migration as well. And majority of the discussion we shall be concentrating on the migration. But the first topic we shall be discussing about the provisioning first. Okay. So, uh, when we talk about the VM provisioning, what's the life cycle of the virtual machine? Generally, the way it goes is you give the requirements to the IT department. Basically, we are talking about the on-premises cloud here. So you basically give a requirement saying that so and so virtual machine with so and so requirements are required. Now here you also specify that hey, what is the RAM which needs to be present? What is the virtual storage that needs to be present? How many NIC cards needs to be present, right? Whether one or two. What kind of operating system that needs to be installed on the virtual machine? So these are the various details that we gotta provide to the IT department. Okay, now what will the IT administrator will do? It will take your requirements and whatever the requirements that you have stated, right? For example, you have asked for 32 gigs of the RAM and 1 terabyte of the hard disk, that is SSD. So depending upon all the configuration that you have requested, initially what it is going to do is he's going to look into the various server resources which are there in the resource pool, and then he's going to pick up the host depending upon the availability of the resources in that particular host, and it will try to provision it. Cool. This is what it generally happens when it comes to on-premise servers. But this is not the case when we try to do that in the cloud, because most of this stuff is automated. What is that you do? We have seen in the initial steps, you go about selecting the operating system, you go about selecting the virtual hardware configuration, how much amount of the RAM, how much many CPUs, and then comes the hard disk. You also then set up the firewall using the security group. All in all, in AWS, we have seen various steps which are involved using which you can create the virtual machine. Now here we are looking into the virtual machine provisioning in an on-premise data center or on-premise cloud, which is a private cloud. Once our IT administrator identifies a suitable host which satisfies the asked requirements, then he starts provisioning of the virtual machine. And once the virtual machine is provisioned, that is like once the machine starts, then the access to that virtual machine is being provisioned to you, and they shall also have a service level agreement. This SLA talks about the uptime and the various other details about how will the service be provided to the end user. We shall talk about the SLA and the other details in the future model. But right now, the SLA says that it is a promise from the vendor side, or maybe you can assume here the IT administrator side, to the end user. What it is saying? What is the promise saying? It is saying that this is what will be the specifics of the specific machine. That is, how much will be its uptime, what will be the reliability of the machine, what will be the availability of the machine, what would be the IO that shall be provided to this machine. So all of these details shall be mentioned in the SLA for this machine. Now, once the user has consumed, that is, once the user has he has used his for his own requirements, say like he wants to run his ML algorithm or some patient recognition algorithm, and see how it runs on this virtual machine, what kind of resources are consumed and things like that. Once he has finished his work, basically, he is basically going to remove or delete that particular virtual machine. In AWS systems or in Azure systems, it is basically called as termination of the virtual machine. Okay, once that is done, what is going to happen? All the assigned resources like the virtual RAM, virtual hard disk, the virtual CPU, networking, IP, etc., all other details would be going back to the respective resource pool. Okay, this is what it happens when it comes to the virtual machine provisioning process. So as you can see over here in this diagram on the right hand side bottom of the screen, it says that IT department first takes your the request, then the infrastructure requirement. It is the request as such. Okay. Then virtual machine provisioning takes place. Operating system and other appliances are being basically other things are loaded. Then at this stage, customization and configuration is also being done. Finally, the server is being started. Once the server is on, the virtual machines are in operation. If it is a web server, then it would start serving the web requests. Okay, if any migration is required, if any scale up is required, then all of those things are happening when the virtual machine is in operation. Now, once you finish, that is, you terminate your virtual machine, that is the end of the service. All the assigned resources which are there shall be deallocated from the virtual machine. So that's about the life cycle of the virtual machine. I'll take a quick pause to check if all of you are okay. Does it make sense? Do you have any questions on this? Okay, everything is okay so far? All right. So if you don't have any questions so far, then let's proceed. All right. So what are the steps to provision a virtual machine? As we spoken earlier, guys, we look into the server pool. We look into the appliances. We load or package this software into the virtual machine while it is starting booting up, that is loading the operating system and appliances. Then customize and configure the step comes in. Here we are talking about as to what IP should be given over there, right? There is a management IP which is given. This is also called as a private IP. There is also a public IP which is accessible to the outside world. So using this public IP, the user interacts with the particular machine. For all the internal management purposes of the VM, it is the internal, that is a private IP which is being used. What gateway it is used to supposed to be used? All those things are supposed to be configured in this particular step along with the security group. Security group basically provides a configuration as in what ports are open, what ports are not open, who can access the virtual machine, who should not access the virtual machine. All those details shall be configured. Okay. Then the patches are installed or whatever there are required updates, those are basically done. And finally, we start the server. Okay. Now this is the same slide which also says the same thing. Now, of course, the virtual machines can be basically go through the detailed process of selecting the operating system, selecting the number of CPUs which are required, selecting the RAM which is required, etc. Basically, in the AWS, what happens is categories of the machines which we choose from, depending upon the type of the machine I choose, all these configurations, that is CPU, RAM, is totally tied up with that. For example, T2.micro, basically it says that it has got 1 CPU and 1 GB of the RAM. It is already tied, right? But certain other details, you would have to provide them all manually. I hope you would recall when we showcased the same to you as well during the demo. So all of these same set of steps, configuring, selecting the hard disk, selecting the operating system for all of these steps, I can go about doing in step-by-step manner, but just imagine this. If you have to do this for tens and hundreds of the servers at the same time, it is not going to be super easy. Or in a simpler way, it is not going to be possible. So basically, what do? We try to use a virtual machine template. So we create a virtual machine template which will have all the details in it. Even AWS also has a provision for coming up with a template. You can pre-select the operating system which should be there in that template. You can select how many CPUs should be there, how many hard disks should be there, what packages should be run. All the details, we can have them in the template, and using the template, we can create the virtual machine. That would be like 1 or 2 clicks as compared to the number of steps that you would have to go through. Okay. Now there is another way of creating this particular virtual machine, that is cloning. In this process, you create another virtual machine from the existing virtual machine, or it could be so happen that you can import from a physical server as well. For that to happen, you need to have the P2V tool. There is a tool called as physical to virtual tool. Okay. So there are various ways with which you can actually provision the virtual machine. Okay. So guys, in the next some set of slides, I shall demonstrate you the vagrant command. So before I come to the vagrant, I would like to ask, is there anybody who have previously worked on the vagrant? Just say yes or no. Okay. All right. So let's understand, guys, what is Vagrant? So Vagrant is an application or it is a tool which helps you to create a virtual machines in the VirtualBox. Kindly note here that it doesn't help you to install the VirtualBox as such. It is a basically script-based tool which interacts internally with the VirtualBox. Otherwise, in a VirtualBox, you would have to go through the GUI to create the virtual machines. But here using the Vagrant, you can provision the virtual machine using these templates or using a file. Also note here that the Vagrant is not only available for the VirtualBox. Initially, it started off as a tool for the VirtualBox, and afterwards they have upgraded this particular thing so that you can even provision for AWS and Azure platform as well. So as I said, this tool basically started off as a provisioning virtual machine provisioning tool for VirtualBox. And later they upgraded it as a provisioning tool for the AWS and Azure. Now what you're seeing over here is that there is a Vagrant command to download this particular box. Basically here is an operating system template. The operating system template is basically called as a virtual machine box over here. So first I'm downloading this box from the Vagrant site, and precise 32 is basically the Ubuntu 12.04, something like that. In a similar way that we have the ISO format, likewise I'm downloading the operating system template in the box format, right? So that is about it. Do you folks understand it? So Vagrant, I repeat, it is an open source tool, guys. Please understand it very, very carefully. It is by the HashiCorp, basically, that is a company that has launched it. It helps you to automate the process of managing and creating your virtual machines for the development. So if you do not have the Vagrant, then you as a developer would have to manually work upon the My Machine, and you would have to manually install the dependencies, different operating system versions, libraries, etc. Whereas with Vagrant, you would define the exact environment, and Vagrant would automatically provision it using the virtual machine, VMware, VirtualBox, Hyper-V, whatever like you want. Here, uh, we are basically everything is defined in one single file, which is called Vagrant file, and it is written in the Ruby syntax usually. When I'm going to just show you that. Is it clear? Can I get some yeses, nos? All right. So guys, please do not confuse. One important thing that I would like to call out is that Vagrant automatically provisions it using the VirtualBox. Okay, so when I say this, it means that Vagrant itself basically it is just an automation or orchestration tool. You can consider it tells another program, which is a provider in this case, to create and manage the virtual machine from you. So Vagrant itself does not run the virtual machines. Okay, please understand this very well. It will tell another program, which is a provider, hey, go ahead to create and manage the virtual machine. For example, the provider can be VirtualBox. It is a VirtualBox. What is a VirtualBox? How many of you know? If you know, say yes. If you don't know, say no.
It's a kind of lightweight tool used to virtualize your hardware to create VMs over it.
In
Yeah.
yeah. In addition to that, there is one example like Oracle VirtualBox. I have used Oracle VirtualBox along with this VA grant to create different virtual boxes of SUSE Ubuntu on my Windows 11 laptop.
Yes. Any other buddy?
Adding to earlier one, it's a tool kind of Hyper-V or VMware, but it is mostly VirtualBox is mostly used locally for testing purpose. Individually, we can use in our laptop or system, but at an enterprise level, it is VMware or Hyper-V is used. But objective is same: create a virtual machine on your system by virtualizing your hardware.
Hmm. Yes. Good point. So virtual machine is a free open source. If you have to just define it right, it is a very free open source virtualization engine, which is provided by the company called as Oracle, right? So so where were we? We were at Vagrant. So has Vagrant can talk to VirtualBox that is as a one of the providers, because VirtualBox is one of the providers. So Vagrant is an orchestration tool. It can talk to VirtualBox to say that okay, I want to automate and orchestrate the virtual machine creation and process and managing the virtual machine things. Then we have VMware, right? So VMware is another provider. Of course, you must have heard about the VMware, which is being used in the enterprise setups. Then we have Hyper-V, which is a Microsoft built-in hypervisor. And then we have AWS, Azure, GCP, the cloud providers, where you can also run the virtual machines in the cloud. So using Vagrant, you can create and manage the virtual machines either in the VirtualBox, in the VMware, in the Hyper-V, or in the AWS on the clouds also. Okay. So now if you have to just understand, guys, think of Vagrant as just as your remote control. So you have your and you for you your VirtualBox, VMware, or maybe uh, AWS, Azure, GCP, they can be your TV. They can be your you can but basically as an analogy, you can consider them as your television, and then Vagrant will tell that okay, uh, basically Vagrant is a remote control, right? It will tell what channel to tune in, meaning what virtual machine to run. Okay, that is our understanding. Now we come back to our presentation. So now here I'm doing Vagrant box add. Okay. So guys, like another question comes in the mind. Okay. I'm just preempting any question that you may have that AWS also has a wizard type. Then why do we go for the Vagrant? Agree or not? So AWS has also got the wizard type, right? And why do we go for the Vagrant? Azure also has the same. Basically, I'm talking about launching the virtual machines. So why would anyone would use the Vagrant?
It's help us to create the virtual environment using our current resources.
That is one thing, but question is different. The question is,
Maybe
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because via Wizard we can. It's a time-consuming process. That is number one. Number two is we cannot deploy multiple instances altogether. Number three, we might deviate from the standard configuration. So so using the scripted tool like this, we can automate the deployment and can create multiple instances altogether, and also can use the standard configuration.
Mm. Very good. You're very right. So basically, you know, every cloud provider, for example, AWS, Azure, they has a simple wizard basically to launch the virtual machines, as you already know. We have already seen that in the demo. But why would anybody would go with the Vagrant is that because the with the AWS wizard, it is very great for the manual one-time launch, one-time setup. You open the console, you click the launch instance, choose the image, configure, and then launch. It is quick for one server, but this process might become repeatable. Of course, it is repeatable, and it is not version controlled also. If you delete one virtual machine and want to recreate it on the another machine, then you would have to do all of these steps again. So your Vagrant is going to act as an infrastructure as a code, right? Vagrant allows you to codify your virtual machine setup in a simple file, which is called Vagrant file that we will see. So anyone in your team can just run this Vagrant file with the command Vagrant up, and then they would get the exact same environment, same operating system, package, network, etc. So that is what like the automation is what Vagrant basically brings along with it. Okay, so Vagrant can definitely integrate with, because as I told you, Vagrant is just like an orchestrator tool. It can integrate very well with AWS or Azure or GCP, meaning you can define your environment in code locally. You can deploy the exact virtual machine setup to AWS EC2 using the Vagrant's AWS provider plugin. So therefore, you get basically in handy automation mechanism with the help of Vagrant. Okay, I hope you understand where we are going, guys.
Sir, one quick question here.
Mhm.
We have a cloud formation templates also, right, sir, in the AWS, which we can use multiple times with the defined templates, like we use with the Vagrant also.
Mhm. That's a very good
Then,
question, and yeah, and yeah, I wanted to preempt that as well. You also have something called as Terraform, if you have ever heard about, right?
yes,
So basically, infrastructure is a code strategy, and the developer experience side of managing the environments is little different. So Vagrant is like a local development environment. It can create your reproducible development VMs locally on your VirtualBox, Hyper-V, Docker, etc. Right? Of course, in at clouds also. But with AWS Cloud Formation, it is cloud native. It is infrastructure as a code, of course, but it would just define and provision the AWS resources declaratively. And then yes, Terraform is like a multi-cloud infrastructure as a service, as a code tool, and it can provision the resources across many providers, AWS, Azure, GCP, using one language, which is the HCL language. So what is the idea of the Vagrant? Vagrant is developer focused. You use a Vagrant file to spin up the local environments. You can have it anywhere. Like Vagrant is like the top thing where which you can purpose for any provider plugin. You want to create a virtual machine in the virtual box, you can use Vagrant. You cannot use CFN for that. You want to spin up a virtual machine inside a Hyper-V, yes, you can use Vagrant, but you cannot use CFN. You want to spin up a virtual machine in the cloud, yes, you can do with Vagrant as well as CFN as well as with Terraform, not a problem. Is it clear? So the thing is, CFN is AWS specific infrastructure as a code tool. You define the template, which is YAML, basically. It describes your AWS infrastructure. Whereas Terraform is a cloud agnostic infrastructure as a code, which is written in the HashiCorp configuration language. And you define the force infra for the any cloud there. Is it clear or not? Can we move further? Can I get some yes, no's? All right. Any other question on this? This is very important concept, guys. All right. So let's see what is there on your screens right now. So we have a command which is vagrant box add precise 32. So what we are doing is, guys, we are using the Vagrant CLI tool here, and box basically the Vagrant base image command group. A box is basically a pre-built virtual machine image template. I'm doing an add, which is a subcommand to add a new box to a local Vagrant library. And precise 32 is the name you are giving this box. It can be any alias. And the URL to the box file that you are basically supplying. A box file is typically a tarball, basically a tarball, which contains a base operating system image plus metadata. Now, what is happening internally here is when you run this, Vagrant is downloading the .box file, which is Ubuntu precise 32-bit in this case, and it would add it to your local box repository. So it is available offline later also. Now you can use it in a Vagrant file to spin up the virtual machine using that operating system base. Okay. And once that box is added, you can create a project. Basically, you can do Vagrant init, which would refer to this particular box, which is precise 32. And you can also do Vagrant up, which would launch the new virtual machine using that base image. Is it okay? Okay. Now you basically do Vagrant init, as I was explaining you. So what we did earlier in the previous command, I downloaded the .box file, which is precise 32-bit, and I added it to my local box repository because it is so now that it is available offline also. Now, once I have downloaded the .box file, I'm initializing the precise 32. Basically, I'm telling Vagrant that, hey, Baba, go ahead to initialize a new Vagrant environment in the current directory using the box called as precise 32 as the base image. So Vagrant init would create a configuration file named as Vagrant file in your current folder, which would define how your virtual machine will be created and configured. And precise 32 is nothing but it is a base box name, the operating system image that will be used for the virtual machine. You must have already added it using the Vagrant box add earlier. So we updated precise 32. That is what it is doing. Now, after this is done, you're ready to, up your first virtual environment. Is these two commands clear? Can I get some yes or no? in the command in the chat room. All right. So I repeat, I have covered Vagrant init, which is basically so first of all I added the Vagrant box. Basically, I downloaded the .box file and added to my local box repository. Then I initialized a new Vagrant environment right now in the current directory using the box called as precise32 as a base. Now, as I hit this, as I was telling you, you can see that a Vagrant has been present in the directory and you are now ready to Vagrant up your first virtual environment. Yes? So this should be clear, right? This is a Vagrant file that has been created. So what is the Vagrant file? This is the Vagrant file. Now let's see the template itself. That is, template is nothing but a Vagrant file. This Vagrant file is the one which can create the virtual machine using the precise32. Okay, this is nothing but your Vagrant file. We have supplied the username and the password, my dear students. Secondly, it also needs to have the name. Name of this particular virtual machine should be LAMP. Okay, it needs to get the network from the public network, and we need to specify the network, whether it is wireless or wired. And after it gets configured, it needs to run a file known as script.sh. Okay, so this is the template which we are going to use to create the virtual machine. So here is a script.sh now. After the virtual machine is created, we are creating a web server. Basically, what I want to install in that virtual machine is I want to install a LAMP. What is a LAMP? LAMP stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. So in this script.sh, I'm updating the repository initially, then I'm installing the Apache MySQL, and here you can see that MySQL server is getting installed. Finally, we are installing the PHP over here also. So now this is how the virtual manager basically looks like. This is virtual box manager. This is basically from the Oracle, as I just explained to you guys. So this is very important. VirtualBox. This is a free, basically, this is an open source virtualization engine, and it is basically there by the Oracle. So here Vagrant Up, which shall initiate the process of creating the virtual machine. This is going to provision the machines in this virtual box. As I mentioned to you that Vagrant can have many providers, and one of the providers that I'm going to showcase to you today is the Vagrant with VirtualBox as the provider. Now I'm doing Vagrant Up, right? Vagrant 1 Up is a very important command, guys. What is the Vagrant Up doing? The vagrant up command is a very main command that would tell the vagrant to create and start your virtual machine using the instructions in your vagrant file. So abhi tak I have demonstrated to you the vagrant file, right? This is the vagrant file. Now referring to this vagrant file, using the help of this vagrant file, it will now create and start your virtual machine. Okay. So what would happen is it would read the vagrant file first. It would check if the specified base box, that is in this case precise 32, exists locally. If not, it would download, and then it will create a virtual machine using the local provider. Like local provider in this case is VirtualBox, which is by Oracle, but you can also have the other providers like VMware, Docker, Hyper-V, Cloud, right? You can create you can create the virtual machine instance anywhere from that box. Okay. And finally, it would boot the virtual machine and make it ready for the use. I hope this is clear. So now, this is going to provision the machine in this virtual box. Can you see here that a new virtual machine is now being created? So now you see here in the Oracle VM VirtualBox Manager, you see there is a machine called as Proxmox 2, which starts getting created. So if I show you the previous one, this is what like you can see. This is what I wanted to show you. One that gets basically created. Now it is going to, the same command is still running, vagrant up. It is doing all the networking and it is setting up the host name for this particular machine. It is configuring the Wi-Fi, bridge network also, etc. Now you see guys, there is a lamp running basically now have come up here. In this, there is nothing, right? That is what I wanted to show you. This is my virtual Oracle virtual machine, VirtualBox Manager. As I ran the vagrant up, it will start the virtual machine. And you see the lamp underscore, this one has now started to come up. Why this? Because in this you see, I have the lamp basically, which is what I'm defining. So a virtual machine with the lamp has also started to come up. Now you can see that virtual machine is now in the running state. Yeah. And side by side, I am also showing you the PowerShell logs. Once the machine is provisioned, I have said that it has to run the file script.sh, right? The script.sh has the commands for it to update to that machine and install the Apache, MySQL, PHP, etc. So that is what it is doing now. And that's what it is doing here, guys. You see everything is being installed. Now the process is up, process is complete. When we do vagrant SSH, it is going to give me the details as in what is that I need to do in order to connect to this particular machine, which is running in the virtual box. So now you can see this process is complete, and this is what like vagrant SSH that I'm showing you. It can basically tell what is that I need to connect to this particular machine. Now you can see here we are supplying the host name as 127.0.0.1. We are supplying the port number as 2222 along with the username as a vagrant. And I need to use this private key which is stored by the vagrant so that I can do a passwordless login to this virtual machine also. So now as you can see, the putty opens and now we are going inside our virtual machine. Please note guys, by this time your virtual machine has been created. Your virtual machine has been created inside the virtual box. Now I'm going to log in inside that virtual machine which has been created inside the virtual box. I'm going to, with this, I've logged in there and you can see I am now running the command ifconfig. Okay, this is the ifconfig command that I have ran inside the virtual machine. Now I'm also going to see if whether the web server is accessible in that particular virtual machine or not, because now it is running the bridge connection. It has got its IP address from the router through which the laptop is connected. That is the IP from the router itself. Okay, that is how this is a simple example where we saw using this template you can create a virtual machine in the virtual box. The same process can be used for creating the virtual machine in the cloud, like AWS, Azure as well. Is it clear to everybody? So that is how this is a simple example, guys. And I've shown you using the template, you can create a virtual machine in the virtual box. And the same process as you can use, as I told you, for creating the virtual machine in the cloud also, AWS, Azure, GCP, wherever you want. Any doubts before I proceed further?
Sir, I do have one question here. I
Please
just
ask.
put it. I have two questions. One question, like if we have a multiple providers, like one of them is Oracle VirtualBox. I have another one also.
Hmm.
Is there any way to configure to use one of them in the VA grant config file?
Excellent question. So how does the Vagrant picks up a provider and how can you control that explicitly is basically very important, because providers are the virtualization backends that Vagrant can use to create and manage the machines. So as I told you, there are multiple providers like VirtualBox, then VMware, Hyper-V, Docker, Cloud. Now, how the Vagrant is picking up the provider by default? When you run Vagrant up, the Vagrant is checking if a provider is specified in the CLI by provider, hyphen provider. So now I just, if one is configured by the Vagrant file, it will pick up that. If multiple are installed, prompt, it will just pick up the first supported one. So if you have to, like this, it can just explicitly tell the Vagrant which provider to use at the runtime. If you want to do the provider as Docker, it can basically do that also. But if you don't supply the provider, it will just use any default one.
Okay.
So if you provide a VirtualBox as a provider, then Vagrant will apply the VirtualBox block. If you provide the provider as Docker, then it would use the Docker block command. Clear?
Yeah. And second question, can we use the same technology, same VA grant uh, image to create the virtual box of Windows?
VirtualBox of Windows?
Windows 11, suppose I'm running Windows 10. I want to create the virtual box. I want to create the VM of the Windows 11. Like
Oh yeah,
the way,
yes. You can absolutely use a Vagrant with the VirtualBox to launch a VM which can run on the Windows 11. So you would have to download the VirtualBox first, as I shown you. You would have to install the Vagrant. Then you would have to create your first box, Vagrant box. Download the box basically, and then you have to create a virtual machine box like the one that I have just shown you. You can
yeah, but
definitely do that.
yeah, but how means we need to give the license. We need to get the license for the Windows too.
That's a important consideration, and thanks for bringing that up. So what happens when you are using Vagrant and VirtualBox on the Windows 11? Vagrant is an open source tool by the HashiCorp that I explained. Okay, it is
Yeah.
distributed under freeware license, which is an MIT license. So it is used for free, basically for personal educational purpose. Now there is no warranty, there is no liability coverage from the HashiCorp. Okay, so you can use Vagrant without any license. That is clear.
Okay.
Number two, VirtualBox is developed by Oracle, and it has got two licensing models, as I explained in the previous classes. The VirtualBox base package is there and VirtualBox extension package is there. What we are talking about here is the VirtualBox base package, which is a GPL license, which is basically free for personal and educational purpose. Now, if you are running just the labs, demos, etc., like for the learning purpose, there is no problem because it would come under the personal education purpose. But if you're using it for the organizational purpose to deploy the virtual machine with the features from the extension pack, then of course you would need an Oracle commercial license, because VirtualBox is a comes in two package: VirtualBox a base package and extension package. So you would need a Oracle commercial license. Now, number three, when you're talking about Windows 11, you must already have a valid Windows 11 license, irrespective of any of the case, for the host machine. And your VM is you run inside the VirtualBox using the Linux boxes, which are basically like the Ubuntu. They're absolutely free. So if you create Windows, then it will require your own valid operating system license. So you should bring your own license, BYOL, bring your own license. That is a model upon which it will work.
And for that, we need the commercial version of Oracle VirtualBox.
No, that's what I told, right? You can use VirtualBox base package if you want to launch the Windows 11 for your personal educational use. But if you want to use for the licensing commercial deployment, you would have to use VirtualBox extension package.
Okay. Okay.
But
Got it.
in both
Clear.
cases, Windows 11 license आपको खुद से देना पड़ेगा, which is your own window license.
Okay. Got it. It's clear.
Similarly, if you use Vagrant plus Azure provider, then the cloud billing would include the underlying license bill. क्लाउड का बिल तो उसमें भी आएगा ना. अब ये सेम
Yes.
क्वेश्चन आप क्लाउड का बिल कौन देगा उसमें? ऑफ कोर्स क्लाउड बिल विल बी ओन्ड बाय यू. इट इज जस्ट a provider. Vagrant is just supporting, helping you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. Okay, I have a question actually from Surosho in the chat window. So how do we get the template for Vagrant? So using the public Vagrant box, you can get that because Vagrant maintains a catalog of the publicly available boxes in the Vagrant cloud, and you can search for a box like the Vagrant box search Ubuntu you can do, and you will see the boxes basically which are available. And you can add a respective box to your local system. You can then use a local ISO also. Sometimes you may want to create your own Vagrant box from your own ISO, so that is also you can use. And then you can use basically any provider in the Vagrant file. So there are multiple ways to do so. Is it clear? Okay. Quick a minute break. Please see what we have done so far, and we'll come next. All right. So, guys, let's proceed further. So now we get this template into the OpenStack dashboard, guys. How many of you, first of all, have heard about the OpenStack? Tell me. Have you ever heard about the OpenStack? Yes or no? So I'm sure if you have not heard, then at least you would know a little bit about it. But open source, OpenStack is nothing but it is an open source virtual infrastructure management tool. Okay, so there are many others as such, but this is full grade virtual infrastructure management tool. Every OpenStack would have a tool known as Heat. Here we can create the Heat templates, and using the Heat templates, we can create the virtual machines. So here on your screen, you can see we have the Heat template, which is mentioning that we need to create the 2 virtual machines and 2 volumes. Clear? As you can see this template into the, we will now bring this template into the OpenStack dashboard, where the OpenStack is being installed on my machine. So this is how I will bring it. So guys, as you can see here, I have created a template, which is the template to create the 2 instances, which I would be basically using server 1 and server 2. And you can see we have created 2 volumes, which are also being shown in the OpenStack dashboard. These are the 2 instances, and there are 2 volumes which are being shown in the OpenStack dashboard. Guys, this OpenStack is not the part of your curriculum. Because you are going to study in your next semester, post the mid-sem perhaps. In the next semester, uh, you would be studying upon the OpenStack in a lot of details. So I intentionally don't want to cover a lot of details. Here you can see the volumes also. So that's what the Heat templates are basically being used into the OpenStack. Cool. So guys, with this, we now move to from the VM provisioning services to VM migration services. So what are the migration services? Can anybody tell?
Migrate virtual boxes from one server to other. VMs, basically.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else would like to try?
Blue-green models will apply here, sir.
Sorry,
Blue-green models.
I'm sorry. Please come again.
Blue-green models. I
Oh,
mean, are present virtual machines on blue. Once the virtual machines on the green environment is up, then we'll delete the machines on blue. Like this kind of technique.
hmm. Yeah, good try. Yeah. Oh, yeah, correct, but not exactly. We're talking in the context of the virtual machines here, but good
Okay.
try. Anybody else would like to try?
So migration of the machines, like physical machine from on-prem database center or data center to cloud native platform virtual machines.
Exactly, that's true. So there are few questions which basically comes naturally when we talk about a migration. Can anybody tell me why do I need a migration service? Of course, I'm going to talk about what are the different types of the migration services and which one should I choose from. So these details we shall be discussing in the rest of the session. But can anybody explain me why do I need a migration service? So migration is like moving a virtual machine which is present in one host to another physical host. Okay, this is what it means.
Yeah, based on my experience, basically, we it's a configuration, and we put some alerts for each VMs. If that VM is crossing that alert, it means there is a resource crunch for that VM, and that VM will move from that host to other host.
Very nice. Anybody else would like to add?
Main reason is the resource changes, that is, and the utilization of the compute from the server, and another is the scalability. So that is the main concern for migration.
Agree. Very nice. Anybody else? Let's participate. It's not that only some of some of you would have to respond. I request everybody to participate in that class.
When we want to move from the on-premises infrastructure to cloud to utilize the cloud computing services,
Um, yeah, but where is the migration coming into picture?
our on-premises hosted virtual machines will be launched on the EC2.
Okay, not fully, but yeah, makes sense to an extent. So guys, what I'm saying is, when I'm moving a virtual machine from one host to another host, I would have to move all associated things from this particular host to another one. What are the associated things? The snapshot of the CPU in the source host, the snapshot of the memory in the source host, the snapshot of the storage disk in the source host, networking. Everything needs to be moved from source to the destination. The question arises, why do we need to migrate? Finally, I have a migration service, but why do we need one? There should be a reason to say, right? Why do I need the migration of the virtual machine to be done? And one of the reasons is load balancing. This is to make sure that your servers are not overloaded too much. They should be loaded in an optimal manner. The scheduler would take care of these things internally, by the way. When you start the virtual machine, the scheduler would see which particular host has got enough of that resources in order to start the virtual machine. There could be times where some of the servers can become highly loaded. And when these servers become highly loaded, there could be several reasons. Of course, this server can be highly loaded. But in that case, once it becomes loaded, you would like to migrate the virtual machine from one server to another host. So what are we trying to do here? The load balancing. Please don't get confused with the load balancing which happens in the web server, which would happen amongst your web servers when the request lands in the huge volumes. We are not talking about that here. We are talking about one level down. Here the request for the virtual machine is coming, and when the request comes for the virtual machine creation, the scheduler would see the various hosts which are available in the data center. Okay. So based upon the various constraints, the scheduler allocates a particular host where the virtual machine shall be launched. There would be times when the particular host gets heavily loaded with several VMs. This is when you would have to balance the load, that is by moving a few virtual machines from one particular host which is highly loaded to another host which is less loaded. Now there could be another second instance when the maintenance would come into the picture. Probably you might have to update the server. You might have to update the operating system of the server on which the VM was running. You might have to update the firmware of the server. Then you would want to upgrade the firmware with the more RAM and the things like that, right? That is also one of the cases where the VM might need to be migrated. Okay. And the third one is energy saving. What kind of energy saving are we talking about here? Basically, we are looking at the consolidation of the servers. Say, for example, there are some 10 virtual machines, and each of them that is up to their maximum capacity. So there are many number of users, and all of these users are running their respective workloads. And because of this, all the 10 servers are running 10 virtual machines each. Hmm? After 3 or 4 hours, imagine how many of users have finished their tasks and they would have released the resources back to the resource pool. In each of the server hosts, you are now running only 2 or 3 VMs each. Rest of the VMs have been released back to the pool. When I say you, these are the multiple people who are using the VMs. Now say, what is the point of running these 10 machines in order to run 1 or 2 VMs each one of them? Basically, what is going to happen is this is going to consume same amount of energy because server to chali raha na. Same amount of electricity whether you're running 1 VM or you're running 10 VMs in that. So what do we have to do over here? We have to do server consolidation. That is, we have to move few of the virtual machines which are running in one host to another host, which is the first set of hosts, and switch off the remaining servers so that they do not consume the electricity as such. Shutting down some of the servers would reduce the energy consumption. Okay. So these are the various reasons, my dear friends, because of which we have to do the migration of the VM. Is this clear or not? If anybody of you have any doubt, please ask. I'm going very slow today because this topic is very important and you would find some questions from this in the exams. Okay, so if there are no doubts, let's proceed further. So guys, there are two techniques to do the VM migration, the hot and the cold migration technique. So let's first see about cold migration technique. What is a cold technique? The cold technique, here we switch off the virtual machine and take a snapshot of it. When I say snapshot, it has to look into the various configuration files which are present into the known volatile RAM, including the BIOS settings. All the log files, everything is created in the file format. All of these files are then copied to the destination server. Now there shall be manager in the destination server as well. And using all of these files, configuration files, contents of the RAM, log files, the disk, the CPU, snapshot, everything, configuration, the virtual machine shall be started in the destination host now. Okay. It gives you a very neat migration as such. But the problem is that it has got a good amount of downtime also. As soon as you switch off the servers, it becomes non-available for the end users. And you know for a fact that the businesses loses their customers whenever the servers are not up and running. When they lose their users, they lose their business. Because of this bottleneck of the cold technique, they came up with a live technique. Live technique says it keeps the job running during the migration as well. It will have the minimum downtime compared to the cold migration. In the cold migration, as soon as the server is switched off, it becomes unavailable until the virtual machine is being started in the destination host. That way, the users cannot basically access the virtual machine at all during that time of the downtime. The whole of that time is called the downtime. Whereas in the live technique, what we are trying to find a solution is a approach using which the particular server is available during the migration as well. So if there is a long running job, it shall keep it alive. It shall also make the networking alive. It avoids the disruption to the users of this virtual machine. Now the next question is, why is that we have to move the whole virtual machine? Why just I cannot migrate the individual process which is there? People have tried that technique as well. Just imagine that you're transferring the whole set of configuration files, all the contents of the non-volatile RAM, the CPU snapshot, all those things has to be transferred to the destination host in order to create the virtual machine over there. Instead, why not migrate only those individual processes which are very important? The problem with that plan is this is going to leave the residual dependencies at the source host. The process is something under execution. Process is something which is program under execution. Once that program is executed, it becomes the process. The process is running, but the process requires some data. The process requires memory. The process might have opened some of the file in order to read from it. Okay. So all these things are still residing at the source host. So every time when there comes a call from the process which is running, if it is a system call, it shall get redirected to the system host. If there is a request for the memory access, it will get redirected to the source host. Okay. So if you just migrate the process, it is not going to help you. And therefore you need to perform the migration full, basically. You need to migrate the full contents of the virtual machine. That is the whole virtual machine itself. So those are the reasons on why we have to move the virtual machine and not the individual processes. So now next is for the live migration, what are the set of the goals which are required out of the technique in order to basically get the performance optimized? So I'm talking about the live migration, and I'm talking about the performance optimization. So it should have some goals, right? What are the different goals? The first one is it has to minimize the downtime. The availability of the server, has to be enhanced, has to be made maximized. When I say server with a VM, so the downtime has to be minimized. For the end users, the availability should be as much as it can be, and it should be a few milliseconds of the downtime only, nothing more than that. Thus, that is related to the second one also, that is the total migration time. The total time taken when you migrate the VM from source to the destination, what are the aspects covered in the migration of the VM? The snapshot of the CPU is taken, that is CPU state is captured, and then it is transferred to the destination server. Using that information, we try to create the virtual machine in the destination server. Okay. Then the various RAM contents. What would the RAM content contain? It would contain various pages which would contain details of the information. All those needs to be transferred to the destination. All that is put together would mean a demigration time. During this whole thing, somewhere the VM shall go through the downtime process. So this total migration time is from the very first step of the migration to the very last step of the migration. In between, you shall come across the downtime. And the third goal is to avoid the interference with the normal system activity. Now, running the virtual machine in one such activity is one such activity. Apart from that, it may have a certain other activities also. For example, it should not interfere either in the source or the destination. It should not interfere with the normal system activities. That is basically disruptions in the normal system activity. As far as possible, it has to reduce the network activity. What is this network activity? Whatever the transfers, migrations that we are talking about, it has to happen over the network itself. Okay. If it is a local LAN, it has abundance of the network bandwidth using which it shall be able to transfer. But if you have to migrate to some other own data center, which might be present hundreds of the miles away, okay, within the data center, you have a different network that is LAN. But outside the data center, that is across different data centers, it is not the LAN anymore. And all we understand is that the bandwidth from the LAN to WAN varies. LAN, if say it is 1 Gbps, of course it can go more as well because then they try to implement gigabyte network. But between these data centers, they tried and implement the optical fibers. Optical fibers also have a good connectivity. But unfortunately, what happens is that the same optical fiber is being shared for the communication between these two data centers. So when you want to migrate, make sure it consumes very less bandwidth. So these are the performance goals in the live migration. Tell me, are the goals clear? Do we know what are we going to do? What are going to we do? All right. So guys, there are three things that we have to migrate. The first one is the memory, second one is networking, and the third one is storage. There are three things that we have to primarily migrate from source host to the destination host. So migrating the memory is the first one that we are going to be discussing, number one. There are three major ways basically that exists, or approaches you can say. The first is called a pure stop and copy. This is pure stop and copy is a cold migration where we freeze the virtual machine in the source and then copy the pseudo physical memory contents to the target. What is the pseudo physical memory that I talked about? It's a virtual hard disk. So these contents as is are all copied to the target host. Then using this transferred contents, you restart the target virtual machine. So what do you see here? Obviously, as soon as you freeze the virtual machine, your downtime starts because your virtual machine shall not be able to respond to the requests which are coming in up till the time when the virtual machine is not restarted in the destination target server. And obviously, this is much larger compared to the other type, guys. What shall be the minimum migration type? It shall be equivalent to the total downtime. And why? Why? Because it is very important for us. As soon as you freeze the virtual machine, the downtime starts until you restart the virtual machine at a target host. The whole period is considered to be the downtime. Next, you have another technique which helps us to understand the live migration. Okay. This is not something used directly for the live migration, but this is something somewhere it got started. This is called as a pure demand paging. Again, here as well, we freeze the virtual machine at source. But instead of copying the whole contents of the hard disk, what you copy is something which is minimal required, which is for the virtual machine to get started in the destination or the target host. What is that minimum required? The minimal execution context is the processor's snapshot or processor state information that we need. And it would have the various contents of the register, and there shall be various general purpose registers. There shall be various other types of registers. Thus, all the state information is going to be captured along with all the pages, and all those are going to be copied to the target and restart the virtual machine. So here what has happened is the downtime will not be as long as the previous case. Of course, here as well, we are freezing the virtual machine as well, but the downtime will be only between you freeze the virtual machine, take the state information of the CPU and copy the register value. Copy the page information which is there in the memory and transfer it to the destination, which is not too much. Okay. And then once you start the virtual machine, as soon as the virtual machine starts, it starts responding to the request from the end users. The downtime between these steps shall be quite less as compared to the pure stop and copy approach. Okay. So after this, what is going to happen? Obviously, more requests shall be coming in as and when there are more requests coming for the various other pages, you try and copy all those pages. Because whenever there is a request which comes and that particular page is not available, then it can create a page fault. And when page fault happens, it would have to pull that particular page from the source server. So here initially there could be large amount of the page faults. And every time there is a page fault, you need to contact the source servers and go get those pages to the destination server. Obviously, it provides a less downtime, but advantage is it has a very slow warm-up phase. Why? Because there are so many page faults which are happening in the target, and each of the page fault has to be redirected to the source. And you have to copy that file, copy the files. What is the one major disadvantage of the pure demand paging? Until you copy the whole thing to the destination target server, the source server needs to be running. This is okay if you're trying to do the load balancing, but what if you have to really shut down the whole server in order to do the server update? In that case, that shall not be super helpful. If you're doing some sort of load balancing from one server to another server, then it is still okay. That is the difference between the pure stop and copy and pre-demand paging approach. So this is the page demand. This is a pre-copy demand paging. A migration approach led to the development of other techniques, which is basically called pre-copy migration, post-copy migration, and third one is a hybrid copy migration techniques. Now we will look into each one of these techniques individually. First, we shall look into the pre-copy migration technique. Here, the virtual machine is not freezed at the very beginning. Okay, so the virtual machine continues to run. Meanwhile, the VM continues to run. What happens is that whatever physical memory is there, the RAM that is all occupied to the target, in the very first iteration, copy all the pages which are there in the RAM. Please note here that when I say copy, this is not the move. It is a copy because multiple pages can be present in the source server RAM. Okay. Second, in the subsequent iterations, what shall happen? Whatever pages are getting updated, those pages shall be copied from source server RAM to the destination server's RAM. But please note here that the requests are still coming to the source itself. As and when the request comes, the source still has to serve and there could be multiple updates in the pages which are happening at the same time. So whenever the page is getting updated in the source, what do? These pages gets updated, in technical term for that is called dirtied. These pages become dirtify. So during the subsequent iterations, only those pages which has got dirtied or updated, they shall be copied to the target destination server. Guys, I repeat, first iteration, copy all the pages. Subsequent iteration, copy only those pages which have got updated. So you keep doing this until when you see a very small number of dirty pages are there left. When you come across very small number of dirty pages, at that time you do a very short stop and copy. What is stop and copy? All that process which we saw in the previous slide, where we stop the source VM, copy the content, start the destination VM. Okay? Because here there is nothing much to copy. Only those immediate dirty pages which would be very few in the quantity shall be copied to the destination server. So here the downtime is only because of the dirty memory as such. And as soon as that is over, you start the machine in the destination server. That is called as resume time. Obviously, you may have the questions. What if the dirty pages never become few in the number? What is a small number? What if it doesn't converge at all? Right. So answer is the one crude way to handle this can be, guys, you look at this, all the number of pages. Once you finish those 10, 20 iterations, you simply go ahead with stop and copy. Because at some point in time, you would have to stop the source server. That is the thing for which you're doing all this stuff, right? You cannot wait for the iterations to keep happening in the source or the updations to keep happening in the source, right? On the right hand side top of the image, this is the downtime. This is where your system basically, is not available. So what is the total migration time here? This is starting from the preparation to the resume time, which forms the total migration time. This is pre-copy migration. Now, let us see how do we track the dirty pages. Now, guys, it is not the case that all the pages would get updated in the RAM. Mostly this is the case when you have the data which are to be updated. Only those pages which shall get dirtied, right? Apart from that, all other pages shall be read only. So whatever pages are there in the VM's memory, they are marked as read only after each iteration. So you've copied all the pages, you mark them as read only. Whenever there is a write operation, it goes to hypervisor to a specific tool which is called as ZenD. ZenD is a tool which keeps track of the dirtified pages as such. Here D stands for daemon, which is a part of the Zen, which is a part of the hypervisor. Zen is nothing but it is a part of the hypervisor, basically ZenD. So it keeps track of all the dirtied pages and you reset after each iteration. Okay. So this shall work well if there are infrequent writes, but if there are more frequent writes, that is likely to fail because it needs to keep track of all the dirtied pages. And if there are too many of it, say there are 100 pages in total, and out of them 90 of them are getting dirtied, then of course it is as good as that you're copying them one after another. It shall not converge at all. Yeah. Make sense, guys? Guys, tell me if there are any doubts, any questions. This is a very important topic that I have just covered.
So, what is the meaning of pages? Is the file system or what is that?
Sorry, your question is not clear to me. What is the?
What is the meaning of pages? Is it file system kind of?
You're talking about the. Sorry, I'm not able to understand your question very clearly. It is a lot of noise actually. Can you just repeat once again question slowly, please?
Sorry, sir. So, in the directed pages, what do you mean by pages? Is it kind of file system or what I'm saying?
Ah, I see, I see, I see, I see, I see. So, what is a page? Very good question. It is a fundamental question. Thank you for asking. So, when we talk about the VM migration, the pages is nothing but it is the fixed chunks which of basically fixed size chunks. So a page can be of 4 KB, 2 MB, 10 MB, etc. 10 MB तो बहुत बड़ा हो जाएगा. Maximum 2 MB. So a page is the smallest unit of the memory that can be copied or managed independently. Hypervisor would copy the virtual machine's memory page by page from source to destination. Pages that change while copying are called dirty pages. The hypervisor can copy dirty pages multiple times until the number is small enough for the pose and copy. That is what I was explaining. It is the smallest, basically, you can consider it is the smallest unit that I talked about. Does it make sense? Okay, guys, any other doubts? Guys, it is clear. Can I move further? If you have any questions, please ask. All right. If this is clear, then okay. So now, guys, post copy migration. I think this is a big concept, and I don't want to hurriedly cover it. So we will see this in the next lecture. So till then, I think we will take a pause here because that makes sense, and we should not really proceed in the hurry manner. So now we are approaching to your assignments also. So do you want to discuss about your assignment? Anything else? How's your assignment going on? Is it all going okay? You guys are able to do that?
This lab is still a, so we are not able to create the instance. I dropped a mail. It's not properly configured.
Mm-hmm. Can you
Uh,
please share with me what is the problem you are facing, and can you send me an email because
I
I'm
sent
under impression
sent
that. No.
sent the mail last week only. Basically, what is happening? I'm trying to create EC2 instance under the configured regions that AP1, AP South 1, and it's saying you don't have privilege to create the EC2 instance on this region. I just did one thing. I just changed the region to US East, and now I'm able to create it.
Hmm. Then it is good, right?
Right? Yeah. If I'm changing India, in India it's not working, but if I'm selecting the US region, it's working.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it is by design like that only. So I think it should be okay because it is expected to be available in one region only. That is like by design of it. You should not be concerned about it. If it is working in one region, it should be good now.
Yeah, it's just started working. And on this this setup things, what we are trying to do it, we are going to use a few instance like EC2, uh, one database, RDS, and S3, and we are
Hmm.
going to come up with one small project. It's not very like project is not very high, but it's a small project like creating a student record, like and insert, update, and delete. Is that okay, or we need to have some kind of rich application working there?
Yeah, of course, you're talking about the part number two, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it cannot be that simple. Like what you're explaining is just, I don't think it would make any sense. You should definitely make it little larger and bigger.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Try to look for certain projects, right? There are a lot of projects being there which you can refer. Try to create something interesting and big. Don't settle
Okay.
for the don't settle for very small nitpicks.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a one clarification required regarding the assignment too. So basically, in order to give the demo on the topic which we have chosen, we need to utilize few resources, right, in the AWS itself.
Yeah,
Suppose if we,
AWS.
yeah, every service, I mean, some of the services are paid services, and when we say that only $35 for this lab is allocated, is that true, or we can utilize any services in order to create the demo, like EKS or AKS?
Until this comes into the same thing, you are free to use whatever you want.
I didn't get you, sir.
Until and unless like that is coming as a free uh, and as a part of your package that is provided to you, you are free to use that. I don't think that is going to incur any charges other than over and above. If it will, then it will just block you. Basically mean to say that it will not allow you to proceed further.
Yes, sir. So EKS is basically a high paid service, right? So in such scenarios, what we need to do?
In such scenarios, what you need to do,
I'm
you can just leave, or you can use it your free account. Yeah, you can just use your free
but
account or
EKS is not a free service, right, sir? It's a paid service.
yeah, so that would be
And if
covered under, that's what I'm trying to tell. That would be covered under your particular budget. So you can use that for that budget. Yeah, it should be there as a part of the budget that you can use.
okay, what I'm trying to say is that if we pick the two to at least three to four microservices application, and if we want to deploy it through an EKS, and if we want to give a demo on utilizing the AWS services within the budget, maybe that will be a difficult part for us. That's what I'm trying to confess.
No, no, I understand your point. What I'm trying to say is that you have the good amount of limit in your account. So if you get blocked by the limit, then you should tell me. If you
Oh,
just go ahead and try that out. Uh, if it is working, then it should be working. If it doesn't, if it breaks you, then you let me know that okay, this is not working. Then probably we'll have a look at solution, other solution. Yeah.
okay, sure. Thank you.
Thanks, thanks. All right, guys. Then I think if there are no other doubts, then let's call this session off. Yeah. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
and then take care and see you in the next lecture. Bye bye.